Let's get the Community Development Committee virtual meeting going. Show that Councilor Perry, Councilor Robertson, and Councilor Coons and myself are here. Before we start into the agenda, I've got to pass it off to Sophie. She had to discuss internet issues along with appointments down front. So before we get started, I want to give her the baton.
Hello. So my IT staff has been running double time. We had a hardware failure over the weekend. They worked diligently to bring everybody back up and to change out the hardware, working with their contacts at the university. But we're still seeing some glitches. So you might see me freeze. And if that happens, we've got some contingency plans in the background. I think one of those plans is when Belle leaves the meeting, she's going to make Terry and Dave Mylan guests as well. I'm sorry, co-hosts, so that if I go down, they can continue to facilitate the meeting. So that's number one. Number two, we are having a bit of an issue with people wanting appointments down front. And I have a bit of an issue because I have somebody who's in quarantine who works down front. So one of our first thoughts, we chatted, the public health team chatted. We would really prefer not to go down to half-hour appointments because we want the opportunity to be able to clean the space where the public is in between appointments. So we are, what has been proposed, and I think it's a good first step, is to try to limit the appointments that are not as necessary, that can easily be managed through mail or the Dropbox. And remember that for a Dropbox, if you had to register your dog, you could drop off the money in the Dropbox in an envelope, and we can leave you the dog license in a secure locker that only you have the combination for. That's right at the bottom of, right in the entryway to the police department. So there is a way to affect that no contact business being done. Also, we have almost all this stuff is available for people to do online. You can register your dog online, you can get permits online. So the first thing that we'd like to do is limit our transactions that we would accept appointments for, at least for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'll reevaluate at that point. Brand new dealer registrations. So that includes out-of-country registrations, transfers of registrations, or private sales, adding and dropping names, things that people have to come and sign paperwork in our presence for. The same thing with ATVs, boats, snow sleds, new registrations there. Intentions and completions of marriage licenses, notary services, because we need to kind of be face-to-face for that. Birth, death, marriage, vital records requests, because there's some paperwork that you have to be there. And sole proprietor or doing business as filings again. And then I understand that one reason that people like to come in, especially during tax season, to drop off their tax bill is so that they get the receipt. And we have some people who like to pay in cash. So what we're saying is, if it's a cash transaction, so something that you're not going to have some other way of proving that you paid other than getting the receipt that we mail to you, but let's just say we lose it and we don't mail you a receipt. So anything over $50, we would make an appointment for. So if you want to pay your property taxes and they're $1,200 and you have $1,200 in cash or some other form of money that you can't track, we would make an appointment for that.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable? I wanted to talk with you before we made the change.
And Sophie, what about permits? Like landfill permits and things like that, or building permits.
So building permits, rental registrations, burial permits, landfill permits, bus tickets, all of those you can do online or through Dropbox or mail. So we'll still be here and answering the phones and helping people. And if people, I'm not sure that people understand how much of our offerings we've put online to be able to go through that process.
There's definitely an ease of use, and I asked the citizens if they not quite sure to actually call you guys, so they're fully aware. But yeah, I believe that we offer so much for our citizens to be, not have to worry about being safe, and so I'm glad that we have that.
We may have already done this, and if we have, forgive me for not knowing or noticing, but and I'm not sure when the next Observer is coming out, but it would be great to put even just an addition, like a full page or something. It's like, hey, we get it. We know you want to do this, but this is why we've done this, and these are all the things that we have online, and this is how you get there, and really sort of walk them through. Even sort of, if we could, maybe like one of the sort of infographic things, because those, like a Canva thing or something, can make it really easy to understand a process, especially if you're not really tech inclined, shall we say. So I don't know if we've done that already, but just any way we could capitalize on getting that message out.
So I think we've done a lot of that, but clearly when people are calling and quite sure that they need to make an appointment to re-register their dog. I mean, I essentially use the Dropbox for my vehicle re-registrations, my dog registration, my sewer payment. It's just my Dropbox was my mailbox in the back. But still,
Yeah,
so I think that we've been trying to promote that. There's always room for growth, Sam, and there's always
Sure.
room to do it better. And I happen to know, like this year, we Bell actually did a little video for our open enrollment because we couldn't come together and do the meeting for staff. So there are all sorts of ways that we can get the word out.
Sure. Even though, I mean, I think we have done a great job, clearly. But I just think a lot of times people aren't aware of these things until they need the service, and then they don't bother to look back and see what's been already done. It's like, it's a matter of, here I am right now, and this is what I need. So I guess we just need to be consistent. This thing's going to stick around for a while. So
Yeah, I also think that yes, I think this thing is going to stick around for a while.
And I will also encourage our citizens as individuals that we should be checking. Though I check the website frequently to make sure that we're up to date on what's available and ask the questions too. Hopefully we don't wait till the last minute to try to figure out what we need. But I just encourage people to be able to kind of see what we got going on there all the time, because things are changing, obviously, with COVID, and just keep yourself aware.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
And I just registered my dog online, and it was really easy. And I think it's the first time I've done it, actually. I usually come in to do it, but it was pretty easy.
Well, I mean, for people who've been doing it for years and years, you might not know or remember that there was a change in law a few years ago. So now when you take your animal in to get the rabies shot, we get a copy of that. And it means that you don't have to bring us any paperwork. We know who that dog is, and we can look and see if they have their rabies shot, and then we can get you a license.
Sophie, my only concern is we do have some residents who don't use technology or aren't comfortable with it. I have a neighbor who would have a very difficult time doing any business. I would say he couldn't do any business online with you.
So what we have, not just your neighbor, I think we've got a
Yep.
number of people in the community that aren't comfortable with that. And many of them we've been able to walk through curbside service with, or make a workaround if it truly is a need. And I think the goal is still to try to, I mean, we're here to provide service and we want to do that. And I know that tax season is coming up, but we even talked about, could I open up town council chambers to allow for drop-in tax payments? And I'd just sit up there. And the problem is I'm the only one that could do it. And I'd be making all that interaction without the safeguards, and
No,
I
that's not good.
can't do it. So the goal, we want people to get what they need. We'll work with them, but we
Good.
really need people to maybe cut a different view of what's
Makes
important
sense.
to have in person.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds good. I think that's it, Belle, for what we needed for down front.
Yep, that covers everything.
All right.
Does anybody have
And,
questions?
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Steph.
That's all I had for before we start with backs. And I'm actually, Terry, if I could turn it over to Belle, because she is the rep to this, the town rep to this committee.
So we have Sarah Devlin, who is our executive director of the Bangor Area Comprehensive Transportation System. She just popped up on your screen there. And also Connie Reed, who is the transportation planner. So Sarah is going to give a presentation, kind of give you an overview of what BACS actually is. I know we kind of throw that acronym at you guys fairly frequently, and I'm not sure if you know everything that they're involved with. And then also talk about Community Connector and some of the plans and projects that we have in place moving forward. And I'm just going to turn it over to Sarah from here. Sarah, are you all set to share your screen?
I think I am. Thank you. Let's see.
You got it.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Belle. Like Belle said, I am Sarah Devlin, and I'm the executive director of BACS, the Bangor Area Comprehensive Transportation System. And I'm so pleased to be here with you tonight via Zoom. I wish it was in person, hopefully someday. Also with me tonight is Connie Reed, and she's the transportation planner here at BACS. So tonight, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of BACS, have a quick discussion of transit in our region, and then talk a little bit about a current effort that we are currently doing to designate bus stops in the region. So BACS is a nonprofit focusing on improving transportation in the greater Bangor region. BACS is also the organization designated by the federal and state government to carry out transportation planning in the greater Bangor urbanized area. BACS currently has 11 municipal members, including Penobscot Indian Island, and BACS is governed by a policy committee, which is comprised of representatives from each of those member municipalities. So what does a metropolitan planning organization really do? So BACS evaluates and programs transportation improvement projects and facilitates communication between its member communities, the regional transit agency, and state and federal transportation agencies. BACS receives just under $1 million for a 2-year planning program, approximately $2 million annually in capital funding, and BACS coordinates with the regional transit agency to program, approximately $1.7 million annually in federal transit funding into the region for operating and capital expenses. So what does transit look like in the BACS region? The Community Connector is the regional transit provider for the BACS region. It currently operates in Bangor, Brewer, Hamden, Orono, Old Town, VZ, with routes also serving the University of Maine. The Community Connector is owned and operated by the City of Bangor, as the city is the direct recipient of federal transit funding. Municipalities served by the Community Connector contribute financially to the maintenance and operations of the system. BACS serves as the convener for those municipalities contributing to the Community Connector to meet and discuss operations, budgets, and capital plans. And this role has historically been a meeting as an ad hoc committee. However, the BACS Policy Committee recognized the need to have a standing transit committee as part of the BACS structure. So they recently amended the bylaws to establish a transit committee as a standing committee of BACS. And the transit committee provides input and is an advisory committee to the BACS Policy Committee. Currently, the operation and budgeting decisions made for transit is at the discretion of the Bangor City Council. This is really an opportunity to improve the process by which transit decisions are made, to increase collaboration and communication. There is currently an analysis underway which is focused on evaluating the current governance structure of the Community Connector. An independent consultant was hired by the City of Bangor. It is being funded through the Maine DOT and it is being managed by BACS. And it is focusing on ways that we can possibly improve the coordination, communication, and really the governance structure of the Community Connector. The consultant will be providing recommendations for consideration in May. So I just briefly wanted to touch on a transit project that is current. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. You had the Black Bear Orono Express up. Could you just touch briefly on how that is different than the Community Connector? I think council knows, but I think it's important for the public to hear that too.
Sure. And I will also tag Connie to add anything that I missed, because Connie is our in-house expert on all things transit. So the Community Connector is a route that provides service exclusively to the University of Maine, and currently is adding on the Avenue, I believe, which is a housing complex for students.
Sorry, Sarah, you said the Community Connector, and I think you meant the Black Bear Orono Express.
Yes, the Black Bear Orono Express does that, which is a separate, kind of a separate bus service from the Community Connector. And it feeds into the Community Connector hub, but it's exclusive for the University of Maine system. I don't know, Connie, if you want to add anything to that. And I believe it's funded through the University of Maine.
It's funded by the town of Orono and the University of Maine.
Do you want to add anything else, Connie, to the Black Bear Orono Express?
I don't think so, unless there's something Belle thinks is important.
No, I think that's good.
Okay. And please, if there's other questions as I go through, please interrupt me because I'm not looking at raised hands on the side. So just speak up. So yes, I just wanted to touch briefly on the transit project currently underway. And this is a multi-phase project focusing on bus stops in the region. Currently, the Community Connector operates a flag stop system and is working towards transitioning to a fixed route system with designated bus stops throughout the region. This will ensure the use of customer service technologies such as real-time tracking and trip planning that can be used on mobile devices. In order to complete that transition, a framework for developing a consistent system-wide bus stop plan will need to be completed. The regional bus stop policy and design guidelines is intended to provide that framework. And the framework consists of two parts, the policy and the design guidelines. So the policy is used to determine how the bus stops will be maintained and managed, and to outline a process to clearly identify responsibility and coordination of the maintenance and management of the stops. And then the design guidelines are focused on how bus stops will be determined where they're located, how they're going to be designed, and how they're going to be put in place. So we're currently on step 1 of this 4-phase process. So following the bus stop policy and design guidelines, BACS will work with our partners on designated the fixed route stop locations, and then we'll work on constructing the stops, and eventually we'll be working on implementing the customer service technologies, which will hopefully result in improved service and increased ridership. In order to do this, there are many different stakeholders involved to ensure that the bus stops are well connected, that they accommodate the needs of the passengers safely and affordably, and that they are efficient and cost effective to operate and maintain. And those partners and stakeholders are transit agencies, the municipal governments, developers, employers, and advocacy and neighborhood groups. And this is the tentative timeline for the policy and design guidelines development. We anticipate returning to this committee or the Orono Town Council in mid-March for a full presentation on the details of the policy and the design guidelines for your feedback prior to seeking any adoption of the policies or guidelines. So that was a quick overview of BACS and transit, and I'm happy, and Connie and I are happy to answer any questions you may have. Here's our contact information, which we're always available to answer questions or be a resource. I don't know if you want me to stop sharing my screen now.
Yep.
I can always pull it back up if anybody has any questions.
Could I ask a question? So the big ask, or what I hear the most from college students, is the time of the buses and how late they run. And I know that a lot of kids who work off campus, instead of driving their cars, might want to take a public transit. And we've been talking about this part of transportation as kind of reducing emissions as well. So it goes along with the climate policy that Maine is implementing at the moment. So really it's the buses don't run late enough is what I hear. So can you talk a little bit about the time, and is that going to increase, or will there be more runs later in the day especially for University of Maine students, but probably for our community members too, who go back and forth to Bangor?
Sure. So BACS does not make those decisions. BACS works with the community connector and helps to facilitate the dialogue, to provide a conduit for information to be shared back and forth. It's my understanding that a couple of years ago, a consultant did a study, Stantec was the consultant, did a study of the transit system and provided a list of recommendations. The bus stops were one of them. And another one was expanding service times. So I believe that the community connector knows this. I think that they are planning for that for long term. It's difficult, honestly, to have those discussions right now when they're cutting services in other areas because of lack of drivers. I know that's a big problem nationwide. But I do believe that once the bus stops, when they're on a fixed route system with designated bus stops, I think you then can evolve the conversation to expanding time, changing routes, and things like that. So I know that the city of Bangor has talked about how they're going to implement that Stantec report. I think it's on their radar. I don't think there's a plan in place yet to do that. Connie, I don't know if you have anything else to add specifically on extending the bus times, service times.
I don't have any more information than that.
Well, I actually would like to interject a little bit on this, is that we've had conversations as being part of that committee as a council representative with the Orono Black Bear Express. It is, a lot of these timings are based on COVID really kind of threw it up on its back. So having extra times, we were finding there were the certain numbers. I mean, Kyle or Bell maybe would want to ring in on this, but these asking for extra times or looking into that would definitely have to be post-COVID, just simply because of the numbers. So I don't know if Kyle or Bell wants to talk about that, but.
So we have looked at running a pilot for the community connector, what they call the VOOT route, which is the VZ Orono Old Town route. That kind of got waylaid by the bus stop project. They found that was a much higher priority in order for us to improve customer service across the entire system, rather than just trying to increase later hours. And then as we kind of got closer with the bus stop project, we also found COVID got in our way, and we actually reduced our Black Bear Express hours significantly because we didn't have people riding it like they normally do. I think we were down 70% for ridership before we started cutting back hours. So it's certainly on our radar. It's on Community Connector's radar. It's something that Lori Linscott, who is the superintendent of the bus system, has kind of pushed for and is willing to implement, but it would of course come with an increased cost to the town of Orono, because it would be directly attributable to our route. And so that's certainly something that council will need to discuss kind of going through the budget season. I don't see that as a conversation that we would have this coming year to move the hours later.
I would also just add that as part of the BACS planning that I mentioned, the 2-year planning program, there is dedicated funding for transit planning in that planning budget. And that can be used for things like this, like planning, like while it may not get implemented right now because of COVID and the drop in ridership, right now is a perfect time to be kind of planning and investigating what those additional costs would be so that when ridership does come back, we would be ready to potentially implement that. So I think that those are some of the discussions that that the transit committee would really like to be having, because right now the discussions are really focused around what's the budget and how much has ridership gone down, and like kind of things like that that could be communicated other ways rather than rolling our sleeves up and doing some work, which I think is where we want to get to with the transit committee, is just things like implementing the recommendations of the plan. So I think that on February 3rd, we have our next transit committee meeting. And I think that we could discuss kind of the mission and role of that committee and peel back some of the recommendations that Stantec provided and start looking at how we can plan for those when ridership does come back.
So I just want to butt in here for a minute as we talk about how great it would be to expand service, that just remind council that 100% of the town's commitment for the Black Bear Express is born out of the tax increment financing district, but that's about $95,000 a year. And the town's share of the community connector is born from the general fund tax, and that's about $70,000 a year. So when you start talking about adding routes or adding times, unless we can get everybody to agree and find ways to cut other expenses that the city of Bangor has running the service, we'll be looking at direct impacts to taxpayers.
And Sophie, how much does the university contribute to the community connector?
So the university contributes 50% and we contribute 50%. So running that service is almost $200,000 a year.
That
So
is that's for the Black Bear Orono
Oh, I'm
Express.
sorry, that's for the Express.
They also contribute to Community Connector.
They do
I can't
contribute
recall.
to the community connector.
Yeah, I can't
was-
recall what the cost is for that.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have questions for BACS group? Well, I thank you. Sophie, do you have anything additional?
I just wanted to acknowledge the incredible work that Belle and Kyle and Sarah and Connie have all been putting into this project. We've always had a really good relationship with BACS. They've been a strong partner with the town. They've helped us get a lot of our infrastructure planning and construction funded. But we've had, transit has been a bear, and Sarah came in, it feels like just yesterday, but I think it's because we've had the pandemic.
Yes.
And really has found a structural way to deal with some of the frustrations. And I would really have to tip my hat to the work that this team has done.
Great.
Thank
Well,
you very much. I appreciate that. Starting a new job in a pandemic wasn't easy, but working with all the great people I get to work with made it a lot easier.
Well, Sarah, Connie, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to come in and give us an
Thank you.
update. We look forward to the next time, and we'll continue moving forward.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Have a great evening. So moving on, our next item, item 3, is Code Enforcement's Office new approach to electrical permits and inspections.
That is Dave Mylan.
Oh, hello, Dave.
Hi, folks. I will try to be brief. The as we as we like to kid Bill Murphy when he was here, he'd been in code enforcement a long time. That his first permit was for a wooden structure in shoreland zoning called an arc. But the truth of the matter is that Bill had been involved with code enforcement since before the formal adoption of certifications and training programs for the code enforcement officer program. And so when he was actually, when they converted into that new program, all of those people became certified in whatever tasks that they were doing at the time when that became eligible. And so in this particular case that we're talking about tonight is that Bill was a certified electrical inspector, which is not common throughout the state of Maine for having, building inspectors to be electrical inspectors as well. There's only a handful of them throughout the state. And so when we hired Pat, Pat is not does not hold that same certification in electrical inspections. Traditionally, those inspections are done by master electricians, those holding a master's license and such. And so one of the struggles that I've been trying to resolve is how to be able to provide those inspections for those people who are have electrical work being done in town. And so I was looking at different options. I've reached out to the state to find out what process I would need in order to get Pat certified and what training programs are available to be able to get him to do that. And quite frankly, I found that there is nothing. And currently there's no plan to provide training in order to reach that certification. But the state law allows municipalities to authorize their someone to be an electrical inspector, and they don't have to have any formal training or formal requirements. Sophie and I had good conversations about this. My concern is that though municipalities can be exempt from liability for a lot of things, there is a level that if you can show a gross negligence, then municipalities can have a liability. And so our conversation was, how do we have someone inspecting electrical connections without having kind of formal training? And if that happens, how do we, does that meet that gross negligence aspect of it? So without having any alternatives for training currently for Pat, I tried to find out what would be plan B. And I looked at different options. And I will tell you that we've gone through each one of these options, trying to find the good things and the bad things, with what's the best thing for Orono. And one of the solutions that I've come up with that I quite frankly would like to have you consider this evening is that we have a great relationship with the city of Old Town, and Dave Russell is the code enforcement officer, and he's also a master electrician, and he does the electrical inspections for the city of Old Town. And David is an alternate for us here, so he's able to do those inspections here as well. What I did was I reached out to David to find out what capacity he might have as an inspector in Old Town to be able to help us here in Orono, and at the same time to be able to help train Pat, so that at some point in the future that that both he, meaning Dave Russell, and Pat Estes, the code enforcement officer, and myself, that we would all feel comfortable that Pat is capable of doing the inspections to meet those qualifications required under the state electrical code. So the idea was that we would proposal that I've suggested forth to Sophie is that we would contract with the city of Old Town to provide the electrical inspection services. We would get the permits. We would issue the permits for Orono. We receive the funds from those permits, but David Russell would do those inspections along with Pat, and that as they're doing those together, he would be serving as that mentor and help Pat. And when David feels comfortable with Pat's abilities, that we would, again, we could transition over in the future for have him taking over it fully. The cost associated with this was, I looked at the last 3 years to see what we're bringing in for revenues for electrical permits, and we're bringing in between $7,500 and $8,000 on average a year in permit fees. So my suggestion to Old Town was that we would pay them $7,000 a year for the service, so that they would be able to come do our inspections and help Pat and train Pat at the same time. They're willing to take that on. I thought that was a worthwhile partnership that we've enjoyed with Old Town as well. My goal tonight would be, we thought we would, if we could have an agreement that would go from now until the end of June for this fiscal year, that would give us a chance to iron out all the details to make sure that it's working the way we think it is, both for us as well as for the city of Old Town. And then starting July 1, if it's acceptable to you folks at that point, we would look at having a one-year contract with the city of Old Town to provide this service until such time that Pat is able to do it on its own. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Where would that revenue normally go?
The revenue goes into the general fund.
So when we had Bill here, he was on salary. So we paid him, didn't matter what he was doing. We knew that cost. When Bill left, we asked our alternate electrical inspector for help, and Peter Hall stepped up and did a great job for us. But it is not something he can do long term. That Peter was charging us a flat fee per inspection, which probably would work, or per permit, which probably works on a short-term basis when he's filling in and just helping us out. But when we're pulling him away from his paying work, we began to see that he really is set up to be a really good alternate for us. So when we look at just fairness, we have a mutual aid agreement with the city of Old Town, or not really an agreement, where our code officer is appointed as their alternate, their code officer is appointed as our alternate. And it works because when Bill was here, we were offering the same service back and forth. We don't have electrical permit services, inspection services to offer them. So it is not fair to fall on our mutual aid when we can't offer them the same bag. So I think what Dave did was, by looking at our average, when you look at how permit fees are calculated, Sam, there is a big, huge formula that goes in the background that is based on the type of structure, how complicated it is, and how much time they think it will take staff to process, inspect, manage that construction process. So the permit fees in this case, they're not flat fees. So the permit fees really are indicative of the amount of time that somebody would spend over here. So I think it's a reasonable 18-month gap. And the fact that they're not charging us more to train and document the training for our person, I think it's a really good deal.
Well, I think so too. It sounds good. It's just, I just wanted to bring up that point of that money was going somewhere before, and it's just good to get it all aired out that it's looking at going somewhere else now.
Who does, and this is Dave well, Dave, I know you know this. Who does the code, the electrical code for the University of Maine? Is that Orono? Do we do that? We
No,
don't inspect them.
Because
Okay.
because it's a state-owned facility, the state electrical inspector does that. So Kern Butler
Does that?
is
Okay.
he does that.
All right. Thanks. I was curious.
We do all other inspections on campus except for the electrical inspections.
I think sounds like a great plan. I especially like the idea that our person is going to eventually get trained and be able to take this over on his own.
So I agree with what Tom was saying, because in my mind though, I just had one. I know that the ultimate goal is to get to having somebody on our own staff be able to do this. What does it look like based on the current workload of David, and obviously he feels that he's going to be able to do it, but what does it look like? And then, like, when you have somebody who does that for your town, somebody's throwing that into the additional work, what does that look like for them?
So I looked at what the numbers was, you know, again, if you look at it from a year's basis, Terry, we do about 60 permits a year. So it's, you know, it's about, you know, like 5 a month, or, you know, something. It's minuscule, you know, minimal for him. And he felt that when he looked at what we do, Dave Russell and Bill Mayo felt that he could easily take on that work here.
Great. Well, thank you for doing this for us, because I think ultimately getting to the point where our person can do that is obviously the ultimate goal. But I appreciate you taking the time to really think this through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, I have one more question. Did the ARC pass code? I heard it was beached somewhere, like on a mountain.
Yeah, well, it ended up more than 25 foot from the high water mark. So then it converted to other standards at that point.
All right. I just needed to know that. Thank you, Dave.
That was a cubit at that time, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, hearing no additional things, thank you, Dave. And we'll move on to item number 4, marijuana referendum public information plan. Sophia, you up with this, or?
Kyle, I'm going to bring Kyle up. There, he should be. And I just want to reiterate some of your background information, that the intent tonight was not for Kyle to do the presentation, because we think that's going to be lengthy, but rather you guys have been working this for a long time, and Kyle and I want to make sure that we're on the right path for how we're presenting this to the community. And I think his plan is to tape a presentation, and we will post it on the website for people to be able to go to. So that's the thought. And I'm going to look at working with Kyle and Pete, our graphics, our communications person, to look at getting a postcard or something out, a flyer out to the public, so that they'll just get the high level and then know where to go if they need information.
So yeah, the presentation you got was mostly information you've probably seen over the various presentations that we've had in the past. it's more meant as an overview for people who haven't been necessarily paying close attention, or just, if they want a kind of rehash of everything. We do have the dedicated marijuana information page up on the website, with the draft ordinance language on there, and some links to different resources and past early presentations that we had. So this would be, this presentation that I would record and put up there would really combine with the draft ordinance language to kind of lay out exactly why this is going to a vote and what exactly people are voting for. Kind of walking through how the state laws require municipalities to opt in, and then not really touching so much on the specifics of the state laws. We have those links, and it'd be an incredibly lengthy presentation, I think, if we went into too much detail there. But then focusing more on the various kind of land use impacts, and how it would actually look in Orono, where the establishments could be, things like that. So I could probably put together that recorded presentation next week, and work with Pete to have it up on the website. But yeah, we just wanted to check in to see if you took a little time to look at the presentation. If you noticed that anything big was missing, that you thought, oh, the public would really want to hear about that aspect of it, and it wasn't included, or something like that. So open to any feedback.
I was wondering, Kyle, so when you say recorded, is it going to be like an auditory? Are you going to be talking or is it just going to be a PowerPoint? You'll be talking through it? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'll have the PowerPoint going, but I'll, be talking and explaining over it. So yeah, I mean, a lot, if you look in there, and it might just be a short bullet point, I'm going to expand on all of those concepts. So specifically, I think when you look at the land use table and the zoning map, for people who don't look at those things all the time, and they just see a table with some S's on it, and a map of the town with some, C2 and C1. I can go into more detail in the presentation about, the purpose of those districts, why we selected those for each of the different types, things like that.
Okay. Because I was, the two notes that I put down are just more like suggestions, and if you're going to be narrating it, I mean, if there's going to be a voiceover, then I guess it might be a moot point, but to put the executive summary at the beginning of the presentation, I think again, I didn't realize that there was going to be an auditory kind of thing, just to have for people who just want to go, I just want to know about this, but at the same time, and then what you just said, I was thinking about color coding the zoning. You have a chart, and then you have the map, and the map is color coded for the different zones, but the chart isn't. And if there was a color code on top of that, and that was just me flipping back and forth going, okay, where's, because I don't know where all of the zones are. If you are going to be explaining that, however, these suggestions just might be moot points. So that was just kind of a visual kind of thing that I noticed because I was looking at the PowerPoint. So.
No, I think, I think that's a good idea. I can easily kind of match the colors in the row on that table to the map. That's not something that's in our ordinance. But yeah, if people switch back and forth between those two slides, that might help them. So yeah, that's something I can do.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a question. I don't know exactly how to phrase it. Again, going back to our earlier conversation about getting information and updates about how we are doing office procedural stuff by having it online. Large percentage of the town doesn't have access to technology, that sort of thing. This seems like a great presentation. I think the PowerPoint was, gave a great coverage of what the presentation will include, but it's just, how are we going to get this information out to people who maybe don't have access to this? Has there been any sort of contingency for that?
I'm not sure how I'd convey all of the information in the presentation, including the narrative aspect of it, because I think, even if you gave the presentation, the physical copy of it to someone, it wouldn't necessarily make sense without, the explanation of certain things on top of it. I would say that anyone who's interested can, of course, call. I've had a lot of different conversations about kind of where the town is in the marijuana process with potential, people interested in developing those sorts of establishments, or people in town who are just wondering what the status is. So I'm happy to have those conversations with people if they want to call the planning office.
No, I certainly
Other
don't
than
want
that,
to put extra work to do something that may not have huge demand at all. I just wanted to sort of,
We
So-
normally work around that, Sam, by putting copies of things, burning DVDs, and putting those copies at the library. I think what we would do is probably put, for more information, you've got the link in the summary or call. And if Kyle gets inundated, his pat answer can be, if you truly don't have access to internet and you can't access Wi-Fi at the library and you're interested and you want this, we can mail you out a DVD, or I can go through this. Because remember, this is all explaining ordinance language that is pretty clear if you take the time to read it. So we're trying to have people not have to read the ordinance language and maybe misunderstand it.
oh, that's great. I just wanted to bring that up.
Sophie, you mentioned sending out a card to community members. And I think it would be great to put Kyle's contact information on that card if they had further questions, or if they watched the video and still had questions.
I think that works. And I think too that that summary at the very end of his presentation, just tweaking that a little bit and putting it on a half card works, I think,
Yep.
for that. We could just work with Gossamer, Kyle.
Yep.
And
Good.
do we have the language yet for the question on the referendum question? It's all set already. Okay.
Cheryl,
Okay, sorry.
helps when I don't mute myself. The question's very simple. It's along the lines of, shall you enact? Do you? It is not super lengthy. It's not supposed to be under state law. So that's, the ballots are currently being printed. So we'll have those back.
Okay. Thanks, Soph.
So Kyle, you I know that people are asking the other side of this, but I was looking at exactly whether or not you capture everything, and you always capture what we discuss. So I didn't have anything additional, but I'm always amazed that you are able to make sure that you get what we ask, and there's typically nothing from me.
Great. Thanks.
Are there any other questions from anybody? Well, Kyle, thank you so much for that. And we'll move on to number 5, expansion of Orono Police Department's community policing program. And I'm sure Chief's going to be with us.
I am in process of promoting him as we speak. He should pop up here.
He's already chief.
There he is.
Good evening.
Hey, Josh.
Sophie was wanting to take this. So I was thinking about this today. I took a community policing class, a 2-day school in the early 2000s. So community policing is not a new thing. It was actually taught by Noel March, who was the chief of police at UMaine, and then our U.S. Marshal, state marshal for a while. So that was a 2-day school that really taught that community policing is exactly what it's been written down as, the philosophy of building partnerships and problem solving in order to solve problems within the community and reduce crime and the fear of crime. So we've always done a portion of this, some of us more than others, some of us that just took to the idea. So while it's nothing new, I think the events of the last year have made it very clear that we needed to do something more formal. And it just happened to align with something that Sophie and I have been wanting to do for 5 years now. So our intention is to formalize an actual division that will be the community services division. And it will involve one full-time officer spending his time focusing on problem solving and building partnerships and collaborating in a more formal, overt manner. We've always done programs, the Good Morning Project, the fundraising things that we do. Those are the programs and events are all part of the bigger picture of community policing, and community policing in its whole is more about building those larger partnerships so that we can solve bigger problems that aren't necessarily solved by enforcement alone with the police department. So we'll be able to assign a full-time officer to that goal and then utilize the school resource officer, which will become the community services officer, on a partial basis to assist with that program as well. So it looks like we're going to be able to do that sooner rather than later, and I'm pretty excited about that. So we should be able to make a public announcement on Facebook and name names, and we may be able to do that tonight, Sophie.
I think we can. I think we absolutely can. That we're creating a director of community policing, and there are some details that we have reached tentative agreement with the union. They are very supportive of the position and are willing to work with us. So those details are not quite public, but I think the intent and general structure of the director of community policing is absolutely public, Josh.
Right. So that and the person as well. Yeah. So as we've talked in the past, Officer Lesky, who has taken the school resource officer job and elevated it to something that is godlike. He will be our director of community policing so that we can utilize his skills in that vein of partnership and collaboration and program building. Can remove him quite a bit from the school to allow us to utilize him at the university and with the Islamic Center and with the elderly, and transition one of our other officers, Courtney James, into that school resource officer position, which again, we're going to name the community services officer. So it'll be kind of a hybrid program at the school where they will get Officer Lesky's experience and expertise, and then Officer James's enthusiasm and desire to learn that role in the school. And then we can utilize Ed to be that problem solver for our occasional homelessness issue, our very frequent ongoing mental health issues in the community. If code enforcement has an issue, or we have an issue with the residents that maybe code enforcement can help us with, Ed will collaborate with them just to see if we can solve some of the larger problems that nitpick away at our officers on things that they're perfectly suited to do, but they don't have the time to do. And he will have the expertise to bring in other resources, would be the plan.
I think the other piece that resonates with me is, just looking at 10 years ago when I was hired, and the council at the time, my primary job was to build a better relationship with the university. And that took time, and it took learning who I needed to forge that relationship with and building trust. And I think we've done a really great job with that. Not me, but my team and the university. But it takes a consistent effort. That was something that we were constantly putting energy into. But now we've built something that is going to be, the new president came in, and it wasn't, you have to learn that we're important. She already knew we were important because the people around her were telling her that. And I really believe that part of our issue that we hear about is that people don't really know the Orono Police Department. I think there's a group of people in the community that know them quite well, and citizens that have very high confidence in them. But we have spent our time doing our job and not talking about how we do our job. And I think we really need to talk about how we do our job, because I think we're pretty darn good at our job. And one of the more community focused police departments that I'm aware of. And so this Ed coming in is going to really be focused on building these institutional relationships, linking with the city of Bangor to help with the homelessness issue as a collaborative. City manager in Bangor is excited to have us join that. And to also find ways that we can better promote what we're doing to instill greater confidence in our professionalism, our standards, our processes, and help people feel more comfortable reaching out to us. And we know that there are historically disenfranchised groups that just don't feel comfortable doing that. And so we're going to have to figure out how to make those linkages. And I think it's too much to ask Josh to do that on his own. Josh has a whole department to run. And while this is important to him, I think he needs somebody that he can come up with great ideas, big ideas, and pass it off to somebody and have it happen. So that's the goal here. This is a reorganization. This is not an addition at this point. We are looking to take our existing personnel and refocus priorities.
Just to maybe ask a question, or just to emphasize a point, even though Josh is running the department, of course, but this is something that's part of who Josh is already, and our whole, which has been evident since I first met you way back at a tree lighting before I was even on council, and Castine was about 9 months old. I remember that. And it's not all going to fall on Ed. This is something that is pervasive throughout the entire department. But I love this restructuring where it allows us to focus via Ed on these incredibly important issues and be that sort of leader on that, if that makes sense. How'd I do, Josh?
It does give us a single point of contact that fully believes in my philosophy. And if we can start making those connections up on campus, and like I say, thousands of times, building those relationships, we'll have a legacy that as this transient population changes in town, as it always does, they will come in hearing about how good we are and knowing that we're safe to come talk to, and knowing that they can come complain if they need to. So
making it more visible. Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think I'm sorry, Soph, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's more than a legacy. I think that one of the things that Orono does really well and is that we kind of lead by example. And I think that I love this community policing thing because I'm a kid person anyway, but and not just kids, but everybody. But we started this, or you started this, Josh, and the department started this before 2021 and Biden and all we heard was about, all we've been hearing is collaborative and working together and all that stuff. And, this was started prior to that. So I think our minds and our hearts are in the right place, but there's so many people that will look to these municipalities as examples, like models of, what can be done in these situations. And I think it's awesome. I think we're ahead of the game all the way. That's all. Go ahead, Sophie.
I was just going to say that, number one, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Cheryl, but I wanted to just highlight something that Sam said, because it's come up that Ed is going to be out there doing all the good stuff and making all the relationships. Ed is going to be out there building framework that will then institutionalize protocol, practice, relationships that will allow our patrol division to really up their community policing game without having to expend much more energy. They don't have a lot more energy to expend. We ask a lot of our people. And so with that consistency, and we can put this more on an autopilot in terms of just the way we function, I think this is going to make everybody much better at what they do.
I think this is a great direction to move in. And I am anxious at some point in time, after we've had some experience here, whether it's 6 months or a year or 9 months, of having some real feedback from our community service officers and the chief about how it's going, what they've been able to do, and what obstacles they're finding and what successes they're having.
Absolutely.
And is that data that you're going to keep, Josh? Are you planning?
Yeah, they're in the, yes, there's a reporting requirement for both of them to keep me informed. So that we're able to kind of track it and also play it back.
Yeah.
Right. Excellent.
The other thing I would just highlight, and Josh doesn't like it when I do this, that communities all over the state that have police departments are grappling with the same idea. And instead of having to pull our people to understanding the value of community policing, Josh really came to the table with his team to look at how we could all work together to address a community concern. And he gets it. And I think because he is so connected in the community, this was, I wouldn't say an easy sell, but rather a true collaboration, not somebody pressuring something to be done. So my hat's just off to him. Talking with other town managers, we are incredibly fortunate.
Josh, I hope you pass on to your team how much we appreciate the work they're doing and their commitment to this. We often sing your praises, which are well deserved, but we want to make sure that they know how much we appreciate them as well.
Absolutely, thank you. I'll let them know.
So I given what typically has gone over the past year, I felt a bit concerned for you and your group when we live in a world that loves to just grab an item or a few instances and then, as I always say, broad stroke across the whole country, that every place is like that. And you took it like hits on your chin quite a few times about when people question and not taking the time to really understand. And so I know that you and your staff really do your best to make sure that the town knows that you have the best interest. But I also want to kind of reach out to our citizens to say it's also our job too. We should know who the people who are out there that are taking care of us and representing us and such. I couldn't be happier to see that Ed's the choice for the director, because I think he's simply the most amazing guy with so much charisma, almost as much as you, Josh, but
much more.
Yeah, Ed's got him beat.
He's got pure goodness about him. That is, yeah.
But every since the first time I've met this individual, he's just the most. I just wanted to sit and talk with him. So, I just want to reiterate that you've taken your licks on the chin for no reason, just simply because people grab the what's going on. But you handle it well. And I just once again want to tell our citizens to please reach out and learn who our people are and don't make assumptions.
It's very nice.
Any other things? Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
So our last thing is a brief town manager's update.
So I have been very busy. You hear that often. We are working through some student return issues that we're working I've actually engaged the town attorney to represent us with the 3 largest student housing complexes regarding the enforcement of our emergency ordinance. So we're working through that. The public health team, I think, is doing a good job, and but takes time. The work that we are doing on the community policing expansion did take a agreement with the labor union, which we have tentative agreement on, but that has been taking up some time. We are seeing peaks and of people having to quarantine. So I seem to go from, right now I just have 2 people on my board. Earlier this week, I had a list this long of people who were out. So we're still kind of getting caught in that. It looks as though the new president is going to request that Congress reinstitute the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which is that paid time off. So we're keeping our eyes on that. Lots of Freedom of Access Act requests. I think people have time on their hands since they can't go dancing and out to the movies. And so I'm getting some of that. Did get a request from a resident who really wants to talk about improving student engagement and service. And I don't know that I have enough bandwidth to really be able to dive into that, given the fact that we have programs that are available when we're able to invite people in. I don't know. I might need to talk with council a little bit about what we can do with that. But otherwise, it's not slowing down, but we seem to be getting the job done. I'm meeting with council chair on Monday to give an update, and there might be some other things to pass on at that point.
Thank you. Sophie, you know, I get it. It's that whole kind of rhetoric of like, people don't realize how busy it is even in the times like this. But even in my crazy world, if I can be of any help on, even if it's just a small thing, please let me know. I'm more than willing to do something, whether it's just go across town for get yourself a Frappuccino or something. Let me know.
That sounds great. I do, we are getting ready to make some structural changes to the website, roll out a diversity and inclusivity page. That I am probably going to ask for some of your help, Terry, on. I know Councillor Gardner is really, really busy right now, but maybe we could pull our LGBTQ plus team back together. There's some stuff there I want to talk about.
Sounds good. Is there anything else from anybody else?
No.
So our next meeting is a finance and operations meeting on Monday. The packet should go out. The agenda will get posted on Friday. Packet's probably going to go out on Saturday, looking at my schedule right now. And then I know we have a counselor or two that like to pick up hard copies. So if you want one, just let me know and we'll get it to you. And then a week from Monday on the 8th is regular council meeting. And we've got we don't have a lot of public hearings. I think we've got one public hearing, but we've got some bigger items to talk about. One of them is Rob's bond budget and how we want to fund his projects and how we might want to use some reserve. So it's going to be fun, exciting. Even.
When is the next community development? Not community
So
development.
community development is the
Comp
third
Plan?
Thursday of the month. So that would be the 18th of February.
I misspoke. When is the next comp plan?
that would be February 1st. That's the first Monday of the month. We standardized all of this for you, Sam.
No, perfect. I was just going over the next meeting is whenever.
When
So the-
Sam's done, can we go back to noontime cocktail meetings?
My staff loves those.
Wait
Wait a minute. I
Wait,
didn't know there was
Is it too late
cocktails
for you
at
to take
noon.
papers out? What?
I would have been there.
So just to remind folks that we do have, the 15th is a holiday, so the office is closed. And my beloved husband actually got vacation time for the first time in almost a year. So I have X'd that out. I will be at the Community Development Committee meeting, but I will be taking that week off.
Very good.
Great. Well, thank you
And
so
one last thing too is the uh-oh. I just lost it. The meet the candidates, right?
Oh,
So we'll
yep,
do a meet the
that's on
candidates
the
night.
4th.
That's on the 4th, right? Before our council meeting. So
Yep.
Sylvia, how does it, is it going to be like where you raise your hand to ask a question kind of thing? Okay.
And we're asking people if they don't want to do that to give us the questions and just email us the questions in advance. So David Chase has graciously offered to moderate that, the candidates night. And I think he's a little nervous, but I have seen him at very contentious school board budget meetings. So I know he's going to do a great job.
You will.
Great.
All right. Hey,
Is there anything else? Anybody's good?
we're good.
Great.
Have a great evening and stay safe.
You too.
Bye.
thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks for sharing. Bye.
Bye-bye.